As we reported last week, former Cincinnati investment advisor Glenn Gilemmo was sentenced to 15 years and 8 months in prison for running a Ponzi scheme that might have topped $100 million. But that hardly ends the legal process for him or his victims. Gilemmo was ordered to pay nearly $35 million in restitution to his investors and still faces at least 5 civil lawsuits filed by investors who lost millions. Federal prosecutors found 141 clients, mostly from Cincinnati, who lost money on the Ponzi scheme over a 7-year period. But clients and lawyers say the total loss is much more. Well, cameras were not permitted in the courtroom during the Gilemmo sentencing, but Business Courier reporter Steve Watkins was there for the entire 2 days of testimony. He heard and saw Gilemmo's victims, his wife, and his children react to the painful testimony. Steve joins Business Courier editor Rob Dahlmeyer in the studio with more on what happened inside the Gilemmo courtroom. Steve and Rob.
Peg, thanks, and Steve, thanks for being here.
Sure.
So in the federal courthouse is where this all took place. You were in the courtroom. What was it like there?
Well, it was a pretty surreal scene, to be honest, through most of the case. It was a packed courtroom, 75 or 80 people. You had mostly victims making up the audience, and then you had Gilemmo's wife and his 5 children there, and they're listening to a lot of this testimony, much of it from victims, talking about how horrible a person Glenn Gilemmo is. They're sitting there listening to it, and a lot of these stories were pretty incredible.
And what are some of these stories? What are some of the ones that stuck with you?
Yeah, a lot of it was real powerful. There was one guy who described himself as a good friend of Gilemmo's, and he said Gilemmo took his investment money just a few hours after a bank, or one of the bank accounts was seized by the government. Gilemmo knew everything was going down, took money from a good friend. One woman talked about how she is in serious physical illness state because of this, and her husband is suicidal. That was real powerful. There was a guy who used to coach youth basketball with Gilemmo. He was a victim. Several people said they point blank asked if this is a Bernie Madoff type scheme or if he could be trusted, and he said yes, of course. But you know, these are people that were good friends of his.
Yeah, I think Madoff probably said the same thing when he was asked. Yeah. What was the reaction among some of the victims when the sentence was handed down?
Most of them were pretty satisfied with it. The sentence was on the high end of what was agreed to in the plea agreement, and most of the victims said that seems fair, the 15 years and 8 months, and they also said it's not going to bring back the money or make it right.
Right. So what's next? You know, you broke the story. You've been covering this for a long time. He is sentenced. He's going away for 15 years plus. What happens next, though, specifically?
Well, first of all, he's facing at least 5 civil cases still, and there's still more money to be recovered, most likely, and so he's going to go through that process. There could be more restitution involved, and then he is not yet in prison. That will take a few weeks before the Bureau of Prisons decides where he'll go, and he'll serve at least 13 years of that 15 years, 8 months. In federal court and the prison system, you have to serve at least 85% of the time you're sentenced to.
Right. Well, thanks for being here, Steve.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.